right. Thank you so much, Samantha, for being here again. We really appreciate you joining us again. Last time we spoke about the Hollywood military industrial complex, and today we're talking about Hollywood co-opting Palestinian narrative. And we're looking forward to learning from you again. Thank you so much for being here. Over to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me also. Do I need to, I don't need to introduce myself, right? Or do I need to?
It's totally up to you. Actually, it might be good for those who might be,
Okay,
you know,
that's my
we
least
have,
favorite part.
yeah. Please introduce yourself because we have some people who didn't see the last discussion. We have some brand new people, and then there'll be a recording as well. Yeah, please.
Okay. I guess I'll keep it brief because I don't really have a properly written. I'm gonna need to write a bio about myself or something. But I'm Palestinian and Ukrainian origin, and I worked for over 2 decades in Hollywood. I started off as a hand-drawn animator for Disney, and then worked my way into working directly with directors on mostly blockbuster productions, and being the person that oversees the whole visual cohesiveness of a production and the visual narrative storytelling. And that position put me in a space where it would essentially just be myself, the film director, the executive producer, and a couple of studio heads in a room. And then we would sort of I would go and oversee all the artistic elements of that project. And then that, throughout my career, I had a lot of questions, and it brought me into going back to school to do my master's degree in colonial studies, and I'm currently now working on my PhD in propaganda and film. So I guess that's sort of like a little summary of kind of where I'm at and what has driven me to interrogate the industry that I've participated in. And I think what I guess also maybe I would love to keep I don't know how the format, I'm sure the format kind of changes each time, but I think if people would like, I would love to keep it fairly conversational. If I'm talking about something and someone has a question, I'm happy to just go into that, because I think that's what I've noticed is when I do a lot of these conversations, sometimes I'm skipping around from my various from my background in the industry. I just don't want to jump and presume that people might, know things. So if there are questions coming up, I'd rather keep it more conversational. But I think for today, I guess what we would be focusing on is what has been happening with the co-optation of Palestinian narratives and Palestinian filmmaking, which I think needs to be addressed, because I'll say this even as a Palestinian, I've been noticing that within our allyship, we are actually perpetuating a bit of a problem that's happening and sort of supporting a lot of propaganda. And maybe I'll start with the more blockbuster genre, but then go into things like, I don't know if anyone here has heard of or seen the film The Voice of Hind Rajab that got the Academy nomination. And I would use that, I think that one has been a very problematic situation, because a lot of people that are Palestinian or that are pro-Palestinian have uncritically supported this film, which actually causes more. It opens the door to it's part of the genocidal imperial settler colonial project, like a film like this. And so that's something that I've been very active about speaking out against and trying to inform people on. And in the links that I shared, I did go through a 2-hour analysis and breakdown with a professor of media studies at Michigan State University, and I've also, written an article on it. And for anyone's interest on that professor's channel, I was invited back to do breakdowns of Palestine 36, All That's Left of You, and also from Ground Zero, that was the prior year's shortlist for the Academy Awards. So if people are interested in seeing that, but I guess maybe what I'll do is I'll start big and then go small, because we've seen there is a particularly centered around Palestine, obviously, but I mean, this is really a larger like this is a colonial imperial project, but right now, obviously, Palestine is the front lines of this struggle. And so these narratives have obviously been well constructed over a period of time, like with colonialism. You know, I would even argue that some of the blueprints for the blockbuster genre were started with the Star Wars franchise, which is essentially like a settler colonial realization of, you know, to sort of co-opt the imagination and sort of understand that these settler colonial logics and these Zionist logics are like the ones that we should be onboarding. But in recent years, at least since this iteration of the genocide has started in Palestine, we have been seeing like a co-optation process from Hollywood blockbusters all the way down to what we believe are independent films. And so there's a really great analysis that was developed by these Argentinian filmmakers and activists. I think this was about 30 years ago, that they categorized cinema into first, second, and third cinema. So first cinema would be your Hollywood blockbusters. Second cinema would be your auteur artist films that you would see at like Sundance or something, Sundance Film Festival, things like that, Cannes. And then third cinema is actually what is legitimately revolutionary cinema, made by people for people. So it's a great framework to use, is to recognize that whether it's blockbuster Hollywood cinema or artistic-y kind of cinema, that these actually operate within an imperial mechanism. And most, like second cinema would be more to promote the hyper-individualistic nature of our society, like American exceptionalism, individual exceptionalism, values and perspectives in seeing the world. And first cinema is really in the bigger scale of imperial hegemony and you know, occupational logics and settler colonial logics and dehumanization, racism, like all of these kind of things. So what we've witnessed since the genocide started is we've seen, at least like in the mainstream genre, I don't know how, like, you know, like I live in Canada, so something I've noticed too is that in the US, like film and these kind of things sort of seem to resonate a bit stronger than they might like in other spaces. But I did notice that, you know, there was a movement last summer that like Superman was a pro-Palestinian film, and there were a lot of people in the more liberal left spaces that were telling people to go see this film, that this was a pro-Palestinian film. And I think which it was not a pro-Palestinian. I don't know if anyone heard that or saw that, or if I'm speaking to the choir. But what films like that essentially do, and where we become the problem when we start saying that, is that, like, you know, and I got into arguments about this with people, is first of all, you know, there's a lot of problems within the films that can be interrogated. Like in the case of Superman, you know, they had, which is a common thing that you'll see, like Arabs are not allowed to exist in any of these Hollywood worlds, but Indian people can be representative as sort of West Asian culture. So you would have, like, you know, an Indian falafel vendor and some fictional country populated with Indian people that was supposed to represent, or what people seem to have interpreted that was Palestine, that this place of, you know, my friend and I call them ooga booga people, like people that have no agency or intelligence, that need the superhero Superman to come and, you know, rescue them. by default, like, these things like Superman obviously represents like American imperialism, that he can go and like save everybody and knows best and all this stuff. So that narrative in its own has a lot of problems. But a secondary problem that happens is that when people are saying, go support this shows that the tides are turning, support this film, that film, these kind of projects, particularly the ones that have, I know I talked about this in the last time that I was on, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating this, but for anyone that didn't catch it, something that's like very telling is also films that have like any American military uniform, vehicle, like anything in that film. This film has like Pentagon affiliation. And so films like that too, when they're bleeding money for things like, as we all had witnessed, especially in the first year of the genocide and the second year, they were constantly trying to, even before Trump, like Biden was bypassing Congress, sending more millions of dollars, to Israel and to all this stuff. These films also act as money laundering opportunities. So the film is already paid for. So when all these people are going to the theater, and when you look at the numbers, financial numbers on these films, when these films get, like if everyone is saying, go see this film, and they make something like $400 million in opening weekend or something like that, that is money that actually goes right away into arms funding. And people don't consider that. People don't ask, like, okay, it made all this money. It doesn't just sit in the studio. And these studios are not independent of the industrial military complex. They're actually a branch of it. So I think that's another important thing where, for me, I'm like watching people, I'm watching like pro-Palestinian people saying, go see Superman, and you're basically transferring money from the public sector into the private sector, all within the span of one weekend. So these are things that we have to, consider, let alone the fact that just if we interrogate and analyze the film, the racism and the complexities of the narrative and all of the propaganda that's involved in, like, getting people to relate to and associate and prioritize American exceptionalism and Zionist ideologies in these kind of storytelling. Like that's a whole problem in itself. So we saw that, happening with Superman. And then at the same time, a year ago as well, there was a series released on Disney Plus, the second season of Andor. It was a Star Wars variant. I don't know if anyone's seen that one too, but okay, there was that series followed, like, a genocide happened in that series, and they in the series where this genocide was happening, they were holding a parliament, and even people said we have to call it what it is, it's a genocide. And again, this got interpreted by the mainstream and especially like left leaning publications like The Guardian in the UK and stuff were saying it's very hard not to see the parallels with Palestine and all this stuff. So we were seeing like a very big like co-optation initiative happening in Hollywood to try, and this is basically what it is. It's speaking, it's not an indicator that tides are turning. What it is co-opting, it's targeting groups that are revolutionary and trying to reframe your perception on things, or also feel like a big part of it is also feeling like you've been seen and then going back to brunch. And this is a model that's actually proven to be successful because I don't know if, sorry, I know I'm talking about a lot of things, but I don't know if anyone's ever heard things like, especially on social media, people will share that the original Star Wars was modeled after the Viet Cong. Have people seen that? So there's some truth and some falsehood in that. Like, this is where we as people that are anti-imperial or about collective liberation, this is where we propagate problematic ideas, because the only thing that Lucas ever said about it being modeled after the Viet Cong was that the Ewoks, not the rebellion, the Ewoks were modeled after the Viet Cong, and it was actually a dehumanizing way of caricaturing the Vietnamese people. And simultaneously, what this model did that it has actually been tested on, you can even find this stuff if you go to the FOIA, like, when you can, Freedom of Information Act, just start looking up things and you'll find it. But these also proved that all of these, because at that time there was a lot of protests, right, for Vietnam, and releasing films like this pacified the public. And so this is a model that the Star Wars universe is actually always used for, and it's not a coincidence that these films come out a year after Iraq or at this time. Star Wars is always used for these foreign policy events, and so and because it works, and they document this, they talk about this, so. But then for us that are, let's say, pro-Palestinian, we hear these things and we use them as to empower our voices, to empower our movements, which I think there is merit in that. That is true. But what it ends up doing is supporting the structure and putting money into something that is basically paying to bomb our children. And so I think that that's one thing that we have to be, I think this is an area of the political, imperial, and military apparatus. It's not a cultural product that grows things from our culture grow from the people up. They grow from the grass and the seeds and the land. They grow up into our culture. These are top-down projects that are designed by very specific people to be forced, synthetically upon us and upon our understanding of what culture should be. So when we see things, so just to that's sort of what's happening there in the mainstream. When we look at what we could call second cinema, or films like The Voice of Hind Rajab, which, I mean, it makes my blood boil, that film. This film was a film, has anyone here seen it? Okay, probably it's for the best.
Sorry, Samantha, right? Sorry.
Yeah, Samantha.
This is Benel. So you're saying, I'm really, one of my family members is an executive producer, so I want to hear this from you.
Yeah, this film is really problematic. A lot of people, I mean, first of all, there were your family member might even know the number, but listed publicly, there's over 40 something executive producers on this project, right? Like a lot of the things with these independent projects is a lot of people are coming on board to support it, invest in it, put money behind it. I'm not really sure what their role was particularly, but foundationally, this film, for the people that were making this film and building this film, there were certain organizations that are involved behind it, Tanit Studio. Yeah, I think it was Tanit Studios that is a French Tunisian studio that was having this film distributed by the CAA. And the directress, she's, this French Tunisian director who's done a lot of Hollywood productions and has a lot of associations and colleagues among Zionist agencies and other people that she collaborates with. And the CAA, which is an important body to look at, that was the distributor. So it's a French billionaire a few years ago just invested a $7 billion stake in the CAA. The CAA is the Creative Actors Agency, I think, and they operate as a main studio, a studio in Hollywood. They rep people like Brad Pitt and Joaquin Phoenix, who were the people that were putting, that were picked from the CAA to put their names behind this film. So these actors don't just altruistically operate as independent people. They are employed, essentially they are employees of these agencies. Is a better way to kind of look at how actors operate. And that's also why you see actors, in the films that I've worked on, when you're looking at Marvel films or the films done by DC, DC is what is it, the WME agency, you see these actors always working together, it's not a coincidence that Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson are in romantic comedies together, Avengers movies together, because they all work under the same agency. So these agencies are powerhouses in the industry, and they own the actors, essentially. So this agency was putting their weight behind the film The Voice of Hind Rajab. It's also important to note that the same agency that you can I don't have my, I mean, I can pull up my PowerPoint, but if you go, it's in the links. If you go to the links that I provided, I actually linked to all the articles and the sources and everything. But this same agency also fired anybody that spoke up for Palestine. It's a very openly Zionist agency. It openly makes statements that it stands behind Israel. So when you have an agency like this, that is the distributor of the film The Voice of Hind Rajab, that is supporting, that has ties in France to this particular studio that made this film, that then employed this directress to direct this film, who is not Palestinian. And I think that's another key thing. The woman that made this film is not Palestinian. And if you go through, like, the film speaks for itself without knowing all of that backstory. I'll get into the film itself. But there's a lot of things on the table that that are already very problematic. The actors that are cast, yes, they are Palestinian, but they are Jordanian Palestinian actors. I'm not saying that to undermine, like, our brothers and sisters in Jordan or anything like that, but there are certain relationships within the Jordanian film industry that are supported by the monarchy, that are tied in with a lot of politics, and there are certain actors and certain circles in the Jordan mediascape that are different from other, Palestinian cultural circles in Jordan as well. So, these are all things that we have to take into consideration when we're analyzing these things. So this film, I'll go back into, like, how I theorize the conception of, like, the inception of this film happened, but just to even go into the film itself. This film was a history revisionist project. The universe that this film took place in, genocide didn't exist. The film was established as if it was a very nice sunny day that, like, they're a bit tired, working at the Red Crescent Society, but it's a sunny day. It's a beautiful day, and it's a normal day at the office. They're playing games together, they're doing whatever. And then we get the call from Hind. So the entire premise was set up as if Hind was an exception to the rules, and the performance that was generated by the actors was an overreaction to this call, like as if they had never heard something like this before, like they had never experienced something like this before. So these are already problematic elements. But other things to note is that there was scripted dialogue. For example, they emphasized the fact that the brother was calling from Germany, and they didn't properly situate that the family actually, like, they tried to present an idea that they were from Germany and happened to be in Gaza. They also established right away when the phone rang, they said, why are they calling from there? It's a restricted war zone. Like, they weren't supposed to be there in the first place. So they set up this premise, and they never once through the whole film said the word Palestine or Palestinian, except for the initial referral that we see Palestine Red Crescent. And they never said the word Israel or the Israeli army. They only said the armies through the whole film. And the only time the word Israel was mentioned was towards the end, because they said that it was Israel that has to clear the humanitarian corridor for people to get through safely. So the whole film, if you were someone, and when you watch American, political media, like the time that I did the critique, if you're interested, I really went through a very long coded breakdown of this film that is in the links that are provided with Dr. Ball, with Dr. Jared Ball. And when you also look at the narrative that a lot of these, evangelical Zionists or Israeli Zionists are trying to perpetuate, like, you listen to someone like Mike Huckabee, and he says things like, it's Hamas that's killing everybody in Gaza. It's like, and when you watch the film, The Voice of Hind Rajab, with the information that it gave you, and this is where these films trick you. This film was not an exceptional film. It was a generic heist plot line. This could have been a bank heist, a stock, like, one of these things where people are hijacked and trapped in a room. Hind was not actually a real person in this film. She was just the voice on the phone, and everything was around these people that were trapped in an increasingly anxiety-induced, like, claustrophobic environment. So as audience members, you're getting your psychology is being raised, like, and this is like a whole thing, and I can go into this, but we actually use these tools to psychologically induce feelings, and this is what film 101 is premised on. So you are coming out feeling really anxious, and your brain is trying to make sense of all the anxiety that you're experiencing. And this is the template that we use in all these kind of thriller things. Now, if you're walking into a film like this already pro-Palestinian, you told yourself that it was the Israeli army. The film didn't tell you that. You told yourself that. If you are walking into this film as a Zionist, or as somebody that's American but doesn't really know that much about the situation, but you heard from the New York Times, or you heard from Fox News that it's Hamas that's killing everyone, you would walk out of the Voice of Hind Rajab thinking, Hamas is killing all of these innocent people in Gaza. This is so sad that this happens to those poor people. The film purposefully obfuscates the truth, and this is a standard history revisionist type of film. And there is a reason, and to get your film shortlisted, the other thing that's very insidious about this film is that this last year was the first year that we had so many films by Palestinian directors that were shortlisted for the Academy Awards. So what this film does is also ensure that those films won't get a spot. And so there's so many things behind it. And unfortunately, and I also know a lot of Palestinian people that, you know, have businesses or whatever that chose to invest money in this film or to support this film. But these are the things where, especially independent projects or what we would call second cinema, are harder to identify because we don't have a clear source of income. Like something like a Marvel film, we know that Marvel is making this movie. We can criticize Marvel Studios, we can criticize Disney, you know, we understand the corporate apparatus that's behind these films. When it's a second cinema film, it's coming from multiple investors. But most of the time, and again, like I would actually love to know if you know, if your cousin or if anybody else that has contributed to this, you know, because I did get in a conversation with some colleagues of mine that also contributed to this film. The film could be like, the problem with films like this is that often what happens is that somebody gets the idea, like I said, someone from the CAA might be thinking, we need to get someone that's Arab, let's get an Arab director or something to tell this narrative, because the Hind narrative is the one that created cracks in the propaganda bubble. Hind is the one name that people that don't know anything about what's happening, they have heard Hind's story. Like that story cracked through. So that means that story needs to be co-opted. It needs to be told and curated and shared in a way of how they want people to interpret this story. And so if you go, and again, like without knowing any of the history of the parties involved, without knowing about the CAA or anything, if you go through and just watch the film by itself, it's incredibly dehumanizing, first of all, because like I mean I'm really glad to know that Hind's mother has never, you know, seen this film, but it's like even the way that Hind was treated, Hind was just an object. It was completely, it was gamified. It was about these employees competing over who could save Hind. It became about them listing their accomplishments. There were gamification badges set up. It really decentered Hind, and at one point, because they were competing so much, like this whole sense of panic and anxiety, that they even call, like a fictional conversation, this wasn't part of the actual calls, that they even have a moment in the film where they call Hind's mother and they're yelling at her for being upset because she's getting in their way of trying to do their work. There's so many problems in this film, but audience members will not recognize it when you're experiencing it because it uses every single psychological trick that we have to get your emotions a certain way. And as somebody that's worked in this industry, like that's the part that, you know, like that's a whole bigger, like this is where I'm going to like derail a bit, but this is where I'm doing my PhD, is actually to try to create a framework for people to understand what they're watching, because even in academia and even in scholarship, people have always looked at narrative allegory as the way to decipher these films, and you don't realize that what we're learning in the industry in Hollywood, they specifically tell us to tap into human desire. the techniques that we use, and I've used this as an example in another conversation, but when you see things like Israeli drones projecting the sounds of crying babies to get people to run outside, techniques of Hollywood cinema are used to tap into your innate human responses, psychological responses that you don't have any control over unless you're not human. So we use techniques to manipulate you into a certain experience, and that is what people tend to appreciate from these films, is that they were moved by it, they come out crying, they're overwhelmed. But when you're in that kind of state, you are not critically analyzing what it is you're watching. And if you watch, like if anybody decides to just watch Voice of Hindu Rajab, just put like audio subtitles on and turn off the sound. Just even removing that from you can keep you a little bit more sober as you're watching it, and you'll see how racist it is and how many problems there are. It had and how they didn't even care about Hind. Like through the whole thing, they get Hind. This is a girl who's trapped in a car among her dead family members, crying on the phone, and they had the actors literally, like, they got a hold of Hind, they just drop the phone sometimes and they're just running and yelling at each other while Hind's waiting on the line. Like, the cognitive disconnect of what's really happening is just ridiculous. But again, like, everybody, and I saw everyone coming out of this film crying, and like they're so emotional from it and everything. But even just a very simple thing, the film only mentions Israel as the saving, as the way to help them get that they, like, not just that they need permission, because we know that the Red Crescent needs permission from Israel, but it was framed in a way that it's Israel that clears the humanitarian corridor for us. And they never once said that the IOF was the army that was shooting at the car, they just said she was trapped in a war zone. And at the end of the film, when it fades to black, it just says 355 bullets hit the Hamada family's car. They never said who fired the bullets. They never said if it was intentional or not. It could have just been that it was crossfire. There's a lot of stuff that this is what history, even though we have the forensic evidence, we have everything else. And this film is particularly insidious because they used real phone call footage. And the last shot of that film, they took the footage that the Red Crescent used where they were filming each other with their phone cameras. They took that footage and they filmed it like as if you were watching them film it, and they made the actors go into the same poses and stuff. So the last shot of the film, you walk out thinking that it was verified by real evidence and that this whole thing was a real story. It's very well done in terms of propaganda, but that's the bottom line of it. There's nothing that, and this is where what is happening in sorry, I'm just catching the chat now. This is where I'm trying to speak out more about what we do, because that has been my job in Hollywood, and I'm ashamed of it, to be perfectly honest. I'm very ashamed of myself and my career. But my job was to do aesthetic storytelling. And when you look at films, and I did my dissertation on Black Panther because Black Panther was a really good example of this, because Black Panther convinced people that it was a Black-made film because the director was Black, because the screenwriter was Black. But these things are so insignificant, because what we are trained to do is take you through an experience. And you can edit and curate and frame and shape emotions regardless of what the dialogue is, regardless of what the screenplay is. That's a very small part of what you are experiencing. You are experiencing a temporal and sensory thing that when we control when you feel those emotions, we control the messaging that we are putting into you while you are not able to critically disclose that. And there's so much evidence behind this in terms of just like psychoanalysis. When you are in these emotional states, your frontal, it's like a lobotomy of your frontal lobe. You might be critical, but you are not able to really assess that in that moment. And films keep you trapped in a prism for 2 hours where you're not allowed to intervene when these things are coming at you. You can't stop and say, hey, wait a second, that was a bit weird. You just have to keep going with it. So, it is a very problematic medium that people have to be equipped with. And that is also why, regardless of my bias in that it's an industry that I worked in, there is a reason that the US's primary exports are military and Hollywood and film. It is the primary means of soft power hegemony. So these are things that I think people need, because, and that's why I've been now invited to go and speak with more and more scholars, because the scholarship around it has never touched upon this. The scholarship just looks at the script or looks at the very, like I said, narrative allegory, but there's other things that we have to be conscious of. And so, and also to go into, like I said, we have to look at where did this story originate from? Who is the person, who is shaping it? Who was asked to direct it? There are, if this was a genuine film, why is even if a Tunisian director genuinely wants to direct this, I can say from observing all of the Palestinian filmmaking that's been coming out, whether it's larger projects like Palestine 36, whether it's All That's Left of You, from Ground Zero, a collection of films made by filmmakers in Gaza. Nobody is exploiting Hind's story while her family is still alive. And not only that, the voice of Hind Rajab, the last time I checked, this was months ago, it had already made profits of $5 million plus that are going to these studios, to different things. And so the Hind Rajab industry, much like the Emmett Till and Anne Frank industry, is starting to become this version of the colonial industries that we see with creating exceptional stories with a particular identifiable victim. And I find it personally incredibly disrespectful, but there is also an industry that has been cultivated over 100 years of this having been done with every major Holocaust or genocide that's taking place. So that's my thing on that one. Sorry, any questions?
All right, we do have some questions coming in. And Manal, we'll go with Manal, and then with Wahid, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Samantha. So I really appreciate your insight. And I think, are you running into any resistance from the Palestinian community? Because I think even back when I was here when you spoke about Superman, and the person that I went to loves Superman, Palestinian.
I know.
Same person that's an executive producer here. And he's like, oh, I don't agree with that. But I think, truly you make a lot of excellent points. I'm curious, how do we, make the distinction and help you amplify? But first, I think even for me today, I lost Wi-Fi, so I only got part of your presentation, but I'd love to talk to you more and amplify your voice more. So my question is, how do we, are you teaching anything? Are there recordings that we can, send to be more time efficient, that we can learn from you and to help with your message?
Yeah, actually, I started because I've been invited on some of these sort of anti-imperial collective channels. I've done a few longer form lectures. So I think they're in the links that I sent, but I can also, I made a little playlist on YouTube also that I can add a link to, that I'm just going to keep, putting those on. So if that's helpful. And also, though, I just thank you just for saying that, though, too, because it has been, it's a very isolating space to be in right now, because I do recognize, a lot of people, I got into one really big fight about Superman with someone, because I think a lot of people too are feeling very fatigued and feel that they want to be seen, right? That we want to feel like we have a win somewhere. And, but the argument that I'm trying to make is that these people know that, they know the psychology of that. And that's why these films are made to target specifically those of us that are fighting back, more than it is to co-opt the average person that doesn't know about what's happening. It's to get the people that are starting to notice that something is very wrong or that are pushing back to get us all back to brunch. Yeah, but I think, and that is the hardest thing. Like I went through, I mean, I don't want to say, you know, names or anything, but I did have like some people in our Palestinian community even make considerable efforts to smear me and to come after me because they might, you know, have some kind of an investment in some of these projects. And it's not a question of, you know, and I think that's what is difficult is that the Hollywood apparatus, and I think that's what I think a lot of us can be naive to. I know myself as someone that worked in it was naive to it until I got to a certain position. I don't think we realize what we're up against. And I think a lot of times we think, oh, this project just miraculously, hey, we got some funding from here and we got this, or this person is doing that. And we don't critically assess. And so I think that's also like, yeah, that's what I'm really trying to inform about. And I'm kind of walking on uncharted terrain. Like, unfortunately, like not unfortunately, but like to be perfectly honest, I've had a lot of support from the Black American community on this, more than I've had from our community. And that's even, you know, with me criticizing Black American films, you know, and stuff too. So I think that's been really hard, and that's where I've taken solace. Is sometimes, like, I was watching the Samud podcast, and someone on it had, like Rahma Zain, the reporter, she was saying the hardest thing is getting the criticism from your own people, and I think that's been very, very true. Like it's, and for me, it's not about criticizing us that we're the problem. The problem is that we can be very co-opted by something bigger than us and help support it, and it's been designed to do that. And I think that's, yeah. So I think the talks that I've done, just for saving time, especially on the Palestinian films, Professor Jared Ball like offered me his platform, you know, to come and have these kinds of conversations, and he really just gave me the space to speak. And so I really appreciated that. And we did do it. We did a discussion on All That's Left of You, which like I have issues, like, again, I have issues with, but I'd encourage people to go watch it so I don't take up too much time here. But that is, yeah, that's something, I mean, I just appreciate the question because I would love any support. I'm really treading alone in this. I'm currently starting my PhD with the University of Bath because I had a professor, like a team of professors there actually that really believe in my work, and they're supporting me and funding me to do this PhD research because no one's discussed these things in academia before at this kind of analysis, like bringing in my field expertise and stuff. I can tell you that no one in my industry, like, and this is, again, I'm not proud of this, but I only got to where I was in my industry because people didn't know I was Palestinian. And so at the very least right now, like what I'm hoping I can do is take that experience but I'm, yeah, sorry, I'm doing a lot of it alone and it's exhausting. And so any help and support would be really appreciated because you know, I'm doing this for us. I'm doing this for Palestine, and this has been, the film industry has been responsible for reshaping a lot of narratives, and including co-opting us. And so I know what we're doing, and it's very purposeful.
Yeah, and I know there's other hands, but real quick, because I think something, and I'd like to talk to you offline, is because people are proud, like we're excited, like look at all these Palestinian films, watermelon pictures, etc. And I did get a chance to watch All That's Left of You.
All That's Left of You, yeah.
Yeah, even though I got some interruptions there as well. And I think it's different when you watch it and you're Palestinian versus when you're not. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit more.
I would really be open to that. I would love it. Really, that would be great. Yeah, definitely. We'll connect. Or like, yeah,
I'll have someone connect us. Thank you.
That'd be great. That would be really great. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So we have a few questions lined up. So
Yes.
maybe in the interest of time, just try to make them a little bit quicker.
Sorry.
No, that was important. All of it was important. Wahid, Mohammed, and then here, please. Wahid, go ahead. Thank you.
Salman, thank you so much for organizing these as always. Greatly appreciated. Samantha, it was great to hear your analysis of the film and the movie industry as a whole. I produced my first documentary about surveillance capitalism and its role in the genocide in Gaza. I submitted it to 20 plus film festivals, and not a single one showed
I was
any
going to
interest.
say, did you get a response? Probably not.
Rejections from all of them. But at the same time, nonprofit organizations have taken it on. They're showing the film in Spain, in Chile, and elsewhere. That's why I'm traveling. So I wanted to first get a chance to connect with you offline to see if you would be interested in participating in some of these discussions at the NGO level with these organizations that are showing the film, starting on the 14th, which is tomorrow, with the Roots Action and World Beyond War, with Norman Solomon and Common Dreams writers and people that are activists in the community. So they're featured in my film, but they write professionally and they're activists professionally. And so those are the kinds of community or people in Spain that show the film at Amnesty Spain in various locations to take part in the discussions. And if you don't mind, I'll get your contact details from Salman so you can answer other people's questions.
I would love
Would
to.
love to connect with you offline, and the whole purpose is I'm traveling for the next 3 years
Congratulations.
promoting the film, and I'll put the link here for the film and where people can watch it for free. We have no sponsors, we got no funding.
Share that.
It was all grassroots out of my own pocket.
That's third cinema. That's what we need to be doing. That's amazing.
Thanks, Samantha.
Thank you, Wahid. We have Mohammed Hosni joining us live from Gaza. Mohammed, please. Mohammed, would you like to speak? Are you on mute? Oh, you're still, Mohammed, you're on mute. Okay.
Yeah,
You can type in your question if you're having trouble, and then we'll just go to another question. And I actually had a similar question as here. For the voice of Rind Rajab, what would your response be to people who would say that at least the movie got to the mainstream, and if Israel and IDF and genocide were explicitly stated, it would not have had the exposure. And so maybe, kind of like, and then I had a similar question too, like, is there anything good that has potentially come out of it? And like, where's the balance between the propaganda and the damage it's doing and potential good it's doing? What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts, I understand the feeling of wanting to be seen, and I get it. And there is a reality that when we are not seen, it's easier to be dehumanized, right? Like I personally have my issues with DEI because I see it as a means to prop up problematic institutions, but without being represented, we become cut off from any kind of awareness. And so I think everything has to be contextualized in its own case because there's many factors and, time, like including time and where it's situated. I would argue that the voice of Hind Rajab is infinitely more harmful than it is beneficial. And I would point out also, like, this is what keeps getting forgotten. This is not a Palestinian film. This director is not Palestinian. And so, the fact that it's like, this is like, just frame it in another way. Frame it in a way that, like, a man directed the film Charlie's Angels, but because women are in it, this is progress for women. Women aren't getting raped anymore in Hollywood. Women aren't like, this is great. That's the same thing. A woman didn't make that film. Or at least maybe the new one, because that's a whole other thing. But like women in James Bond movies, was that progress for women? Sean Connery spanking them one James Bond film shows them being raped, but you've got a woman in there. That's great. That's great for women's movement. This is actually the same kind of positioning that the Hind Rajab film is taking. It is not a Palestinian director. They're having actors in it, even if they are Jordanian Palestinians. Actors do not have any effect on what story is being told. Those actors could have not been Palestinian, and it still would have been the same film and the same film experience, the same story, the same narrative being perpetuated. And Hind in this film was a prize, not a person. She was a voice on the phone that they were competing over, trying to figure out who has a better plan to rescue her, while they were angry at each other. It was a bunch of people in an office getting angry at each other. That's what that film was about. Hind didn't exist. She wasn't humanized. There was nothing that humanized her. She became this objectified, abstract voice that was like a fox hunt prize. That's not a win for Palestinians. And the confusion in a lot of this is because of the emotional manipulation in this film. And because the emotions ran so high and people felt so emotionally relieved even after, because this film is very stressful and they do everything in it. The camera moves, the costuming, you have actors pulling at their clothes, sweating, snot dripping, freaking out. The whole film is uncomfortable and nothing actually really happens other than getting these anxious emotions up. That when it's over, you feel so much emotional relief. You probably just don't even know what you're feeling anymore, which is, kind of what happens with most audiences. So this idea of like, I've seen that argument, this idea of being like, well, that's how you make it into Hollywood. And I think we have a bigger question that we need to ask, and this is something where I use very strong words in this article that I wrote that's on my website that is linked there, but I did say shame on the people that support this film, and I still mean that, because we have to also interrogate a larger picture. As Palestinians in the diaspora, we need to start asking ourselves, what is more important? Is American imperialism more important to us, or is a free Palestine more important to us? Because unfortunately, those two things are not bed partners. And so if a lot of people in the diaspora might, like, we have to, I know this is where I get people angry at me, but I feel like it needs to be said among our communities. If it's more important, like a lot of these things signal, and we need to ask ourselves these questions. Is it that we feel that we want to be equally accepted among oppressor circles, among imperialists, among these ideas, and we just don't like that we're at the bottom of that we're the Palestinians that nobody likes and everyone thinks we're a terrorist? Or do we actually want a free Palestine? Because if what we want is for people in the oppressor circles to just accept us, that means we're throwing Palestine under the bus. And that's the bigger question. I know in the short term we have other obstacles before we overthrow this whole problematic system. But if the win of being at an Academy Award is more important to you than the dignity of Palestine, that's what we have to interrogate. And these systems need to come down, because these systems were only built, I don't think I need to explain to anybody here that the Super Bowl was going on while children were being shredded when they crossed the red line in Rafah, and people are shredded on the walls. Why do you think Hollywood was invented? So if it's like, oh, but then that way we get to be there too, that's really what you're asking when you're asking for that. And that's why, Wahid, with your films, like, this is what third cinema is. We need to stop pedestaling these things. They're not good enough for us. Like, that's the bottom line. I know that, and this is where, like, the negotiating of that is also something that we have to start asking ourselves. Where are we sitting as Palestinians in the diaspora? Like, truly, we have to look at that. So that, you know, and again, I wish that I could have invited all of, like, if all of you knew me even 10 years ago, you know, like I was going to the, like I'm on these red carpets, I have the dresses, I was going to the Oscars. But when you see what this is from the inside, like it is not what you think it is, what they want you to think it is. Like it is there for a reason. These celebrities, they don't win awards based on meritocracy. They win it on who is the celebrity that we want people following this year. That's who's going to get the Academy Award. That's the person that's going to tell you who to think, who to like, if they support Israel or Palestine or not. Like all of these things, it's all part of a bigger system. So that's sorry. I know I'm supposed to keep this answer short, but that's my answer when we talk about, well, if we put those things in, then we don't get to sit in there. And that's my question to you is like, okay, so what does sitting in there mean for you? Because Voice of Hind Rajab, sitting in there comes at the expense of history revisionism. If like, and I don't want to imagine this future, but let's just pretend for a second that Israel can be like, because Canada has been, and I don't think it's fully successful, and I'm with the Indigenous people here in Canada, but if Israel gets to be like 99.99999% Israelis, and there's maybe a few thousand Palestinians scattered around, this is the narrative they'll want you to remember. Remember those Hamas people. Remember those. This film will outlive the forensic evidence. It will outlive the news media. Any of those things, films as cultural products outlive it. That is the cost of your compromise. So that's my question. That the answer to that question comes from where do you situate yourself as more American or as more Palestinian? And that's the question we have to ask ourselves, I think. Sorry, I know that's really blunt. This is why people hate me.
No, these are like some of the most important discussions we need to be having. If you're if you're okay to go
I'm
over?
okay. I'm okay. It's just for
All right.
anyone else. Like
There's a few more questions. Anybody
Sure.
who, if you're okay, and maybe we'll take three
I
or
can
four
say
more.
as long, honestly, I cleared up like a good hour and a half. So like as long as for you,
Awesome.
it's.
Thank you so
Can you
much.
hear me?
Yeah, Mohammed,
Yes.
please. Thank you.
Hi, Samantha. Hi, everybody. As Salman told you, I'm in Gaza, unfortunately, and I have witnessed all of the wars since I was 7. I witnessed the first war in Gaza in 2008. And I would confirm two things in this meeting that you have said. I need everybody to be clear with it. The first, I agree 100% with you because the Israeli and its supporters are doing two things. I want you to focus on those two things. First, they are destroying systems like economy. And I'm building and I'm working on a small solution. I'll discuss it here with Salman in July, I think. And the
Yeah.
second thing, as what you discussed, they are building systems about the films, the cultures, the things that they are taking from us. So that's it from my side, and I would appreciate that, and I would to say that I'm just starting to publish content, films content in short content on social media using AI to amplify my voice and our voices. So I would appreciate, as Karina said, if you have anything to learn from you, because you are cinematic, Disney. Also, I'm a designer. I'm a graphic designer. So would be amazing. Thank you.
If actually, since you're there too, we could maybe follow up after, but I used to do a lot of teaching in my industry on animation, on filmmaking, on storytelling. So I'd also love to, like, if there's just even on an artistic level, if you ever want to collaborate on something, I'd love to stay in touch.
For sure.
Thank you so much. Another couple of questions in the chat. One from Adam was, considering the importance of your independent work and support needs, are there specific items you can mention that you need support with?
Oh my gosh. everything. I don't want to break down here, but it's been it's really hard. Like I wish and I don't even know what I need. Like, financially I'm sort of living off of my savings right now because I don't want to be continuing to take contracts from Hollywood. And I don't even, because I'm by myself. Like some people say to me like, oh, you should do a podcast, or oh, you should do this. And I don't even know how to set all that stuff up. So right now I'm just working on like, I don't like my PhD and sort of a book and sort of trying to do analyses and bring all this information together. But I do need support, and but I don't even know what yet. So I do appreciate that though. But maybe when I can think of specific things, I'll put that out there or something. But I just appreciate being asked.
Yeah, and like let's say you put a list of few things together, we can always send it out to our mailing list too.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Question, and then maybe we'll take just two more questions. Azra said, did they want to show humanitarian organizations in a bad light?
In general?
Yeah, I guess.
I think it depends who owns the organization. Because when you had like the World Food Kitchen or something, and they like certain this is where we really have to do our go down a rabbit hole in our research. Certain organizations that are owned by, I guess I'll use the word imperialist because not all of them are specifically Zionist, but CEOs or boards of directors that are affiliated with certain groups, those organizations will even get propped up in like Hollywood films or in other films, whereas other organizations won't even get acknowledged, or purposefully left. Like I would argue, like, because they don't even want to acknowledge that they exist, but they would purposely make sure that the story is told in a way that you wouldn't know that organization is there. So I would say it's more things like that. It's more about the kind of interests that depends on who runs the organization, I think.
Another question from Dal. But do you think they are actively seeking not to humanize her, or is it more a byproduct of the visual aesthetics and exploiting their knowledge of human emotions?
Like with Hind.
Yeah, yeah. And do we think that Brad Pitt and Joaquin Phoenix actively know what's going on? So this
okay, I'll start with the second half because it's easier. Yes, they know what's going on. They don't care.
Okay.
If anything, they're very pro-Zionist, and they really fall into this narrative of like Brad Pitt is a regular. He does regular photo opportunities at the the Holocaust museums that are set up by Zionist institutions and stuff. And this is someone that's had alleged child beating accusations, and it's on his Wikipedia page even. It's not a secret, but these are not people. These are Epstein class people, I guess, is maybe just the easiest way to describe them. And I think that to them, Palestinian people are not human. It's not significant to them if Palestinian people live or die. So I think it doesn't bother them. I think they see it more as it's just they want Israel to thrive. It's more their thing. And they are asked to be spokes. I don't even think. Honestly, I really don't think they care about this film even. I don't think it even means anything to them. It's just if the CIA will pick people that they need to help promote it. They're there to promote. I don't think they had any participation in the film or anything like that. So it's more just to put their name behind it. And again, I think that there was a big push for this film to circulate for history revisionist reasons. I don't think necessarily financial reasons, but I think more for reclaiming the narrative that they want to have. In terms of, sorry, the first part was the dehumanizing of Hind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, again, for the narrative reclamation, it is important to dehumanize her. The dehumanizing doesn't necessarily take place in the way of like making her like they didn't try to, you know, they didn't do the American trope of like making Palestinians like terrorists or something like that, but the dehumanizing occurs in not like, you know, obviously keeping her in the abstract, keeping like she's just a voice that you overhear, and you never see Hind in that film. And again, there's different arguments to be made about like, you know, that they're keeping it within the Red Crescent Center. There were other Hind Rajab films made. Again, I actually take issue with them, but these directors of these other films chose to have a camera in the car with Hind, so at least it makes her a real person, a character in this story. But in this film, that she existed in the abstract, and it was also the behavior around the calls. Like I said, that there are the times when they're talking to her on the phone but not because it humanizes Hind, it's because it actually over individualized the actors. Like you showed the emotional agony of the actors as they're talking to her. But when we didn't have those opportunities for the actors to be like overly emotional, Hind, they would just drop the phone and completely forget that this is a little girl. Like, would you ever do that to a little girl, like trapped in a car? You know, like, so it's also in the way that Hind becomes an object that can be discarded at the leisure of what is needed for this story. And also the treatment of Hind's mother in the story was also very dehumanizing. It was very just like, you know, just that she was positioned to be an inconvenience that was getting in their way. And so those kind of things, like that is, and they are created as abstract props in the story. There was no humanizing, like you just hear a scare. The only humanizing she got is the kind of humanizing that anyone would feel if they heard a scared little girl's voice on the phone. I personally found that the things they played at the UN assembly or listening to the forensic evidence is much more emotional and situates you in understanding how Hind might have been feeling than this film did, because of how they edited it and cut it up and everything. So that's the kind of dehumanizing that they're doing. It's sort of an abstraction of her.
Right. Then like and then I had a question myself.
Yeah.
So, you know, military industrial complex, that's something that you spoke about last time, and its connection to Hollywood. Today you were even more direct than last time. Like, you know,
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of talks lately, so I've been getting like
yeah, no, it's good. Like, you know, we watch a movie and that money goes to make bombs, right?
Yeah.
And like you last time you talked about the connections with Pentagon and how the Pentagon has a movie budget, and they literally work with directors and writers
Yeah.
to enrich the movies with their propaganda. Um, how closely connected is this Hollywood to, like, let's say, bomb pipeline? Like, what would be a good example
yeah.
what would be a
There
good
is.
example of that?
Well, I'll give you, like, I think I might have brought this up last time, but if I didn't, one example that, you know, I've given before is that the software that started development in the early 70s for drone warfare, the name is RenderMan. And if anybody knows anything about the animation industry, this is Pixar Studios' proprietary software. So the software that is used for remote, that was, you know, and now there's obviously many different softwares used, they are all based off of 3D animation software, which is why the industry went towards 3D. This is where video games, you know, like I'll take a studio that's local to Montreal, Ubisoft Studios develops the software, and they own the owners of Ubisoft Studios that are called the Guillemot brothers in France. They own another company called Thrustmasters that manufactures the hardware for F-35 controller parts. So all of the games that are being developed at Ubisoft and players playing them, testing them, online forums saying, oh, I like this, I don't like that, fix this. This is all used. It's duo purpose, basically. So there is, in that way, like a very close link. Another, element of the Hollywood apparatus, and this is where, because Pentagon budgets don't get disclosed, and I have been downloading so many FOIA documents right now and stuff too, but this is another area where, like, take Disney's Imagineering or different projects like Avatar. They are building all of these robotics for the film. Why do they need to build robotics for the film if they have CG animation? Like, why do you need to do that? Like, so there's a lot of like money that goes into Hollywood to test and develop robotics, or those like dogs that we see walking around, these kind of things that there is that. But anything with 3D animation was developed initially. Like, the reason that it got put into the film industry is because they couldn't field test this software fast enough, and if artists got involved in creating worlds and creating scenarios, it was able to develop the software faster, because that's basically what needs to be recreated in the, like, when you've got, say, a drone or something, it is recreating a 3D model in its head, right, in its own brain, and that's what we help develop as artists in the industry. So there's that whole part that's like very on top of that the industry serves ideological purposes, like soft power and cultural hegemony and everything, but there is a physical aspect of it too. And that's why I'm saying, like, it has to be realized that this is part of an apparatus. I think what I've experienced, especially since the last time, like since I finished my dissertation, and I've been speaking about this, particularly speaking in North America, a lot, I've noticed that there seems to be sort of an accepting that Hollywood is like a separate thing. Like, I'll see even people that are reporters and everything, they're criticizing all of these things. Like, they know all the connections, the military industrial complex, the academic feed, into development and with research with Tel Aviv and all of this stuff. And then all of a sudden they start talking about this movie like it's just like some creative artist put a movie out that happened to get hundreds of millions of dollars, or something. And it seems to be seen as a separate cultural product, but it's really not. It really needs to be thought of as like a duo purpose branch of this sort of imperial apparatus. It doesn't necessarily work for the CIA or work for the Pentagon. It's a branch like the CIA is, like the Pentagon is. And so they all collectively, work together, and there is, Pentagon is always involved when it comes to having military equipment on the screen, right? Like Top Gun, things like this, that they get these deals to use the equipment. And the Pentagon's requirements are that the Pentagon or that the US military is always shown in a good light.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily address the CIA involvement. And the CIA films, they actually don't care if the US military is shown in a bad light, as long as the ideological narrative is put through. And that's why you can get films where it looks like the US government is bad, but Superman is good or something like that. Right. Because ideologically, more Americans identify with Superman himself, and then Superman will embody the sort of the Zionist or imperial consciousness that, or logic that they want, to perpetuate things, that it's righteous to invade, or that it's righteous to have American interference or military bases around the world, or all of these kind of things.
Right. And then, that Hollywood military and entertainment complex that you mentioned, I just relinked one of the articles from Vicky that you mentioned last time as well. The script for all these movies that we have all watched, Apollo 13, Armageddon, Top Gun, all these other movies, they have literally been approved by Pentagon before we see them. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like it's not conspiracy theory. It's like, with black and
No,
white
and
facts.
there's a scholar in the US called Roger Stahl, and he's done a lot of work on this, and he's made a film, like he made a film called Militainment. He's with the University of Atlanta, I think, and he did a film called Militainment, and he also did a film called Through the Crosshairs, which is a really good analysis of how camera angles have changed and how video games are always putting you in the position of like the perpetrator lens, and that there has been a deliberate like change of camera both in news media and ever, but he tracked it through like, a 70-year timeline, and it's really, really good work that he's doing. And there's also someone, there's Matthew Alford, who's one of the people that's supporting my work right now, based in the UK. He wrote like a really great article called "Why is the CIA and Pentagon in Hollywood?" and he's done some really good work on that too. And yeah, there's a lot of scholars that do the military Hollywood analysis. Like we don't get to see that work because it's not going to be published in mainstream media, but they are doing some good work. It's just more like the stuff that I'm trying to narrow in on right now in my future research is more the ideological and the psychological manipulation that the artistic tools are also, using on us and stuff.
Maybe one last question. Thank you so much again.
Yeah.
I had this question, and Sarah had a similar question as well. Like, basically, what do we do about this? Do we stop watching movies? Do we do it in a mindful way? Like, and then I'll just pick like The Notebook as an example. It's a
Yeah.
romantic movie, famous cult favorite, and my wife and I loved it. It does have a little bit of military element in there because the second love interest was
Yeah.
a military officer. Like, is there propaganda in there that,
Yeah.
my wife and I missed?
There is, and there's also like there is a lot of like a big thing is about hyper individualism and like creating a society of collective hyper individualists, which we basically do live in a very liberal societies in the West. This is also part of the problem, is like, and so these films do. It's not just the overt things that are easily identifiable, and it is a good question. I do think that, like, I think realistically, what we don't realize is that because of these psychological manipulations, we have actually become addicted to films. Like we've become addicted to needing them for relief, needing them for an escape. Like it's almost like taking a heroin shot or something. And so I think that we need to look at it like that there is an emotional addiction that's been happening, and that is curated. Like, and if you look at our books that we learn from, like literally, like the books that we learn about Hollywood storytelling, like for example, Story by Robert McKee is a Bible for the industry. They all talk about tapping into innate psychological desires, innate human behavior. So I think that there is an emotional addiction that is there, and I think also the thing is that what is difficult to protect yourself against, and so I'll just repeat this, like if any of you watch the other conversations, and I'll send a link with all of my playlist that I made, but one thing that I did bring up, and because this question was asked, and that's why I brought up the drone baby thing, because what we are tapping into is like when people hear babies crying on drones, to resist what is being done to you means that you have to be the kind of person that learns to not care that babies are crying. Like that's the level that we're operating at, and that's what's hard, and that's why I actually do think we need to divest from the level of addiction that we have to film as a form of entertainment. And it's also, just as an art form, it's ossified. Like art should be reflective of where we are in community with people. It should be allowed to grow and adapt and shape itself to what our needs are at this time. And film is always an ossified telling of a certain set of values, of a certain narrative. And so to not situate the film in the context of what it is and to constantly be replaying it, I mean, that's what fascism is ossifying our thought process, ossifying change, the opportunity to change. So I think that also needs to be thought about, but there is an emotional manipulation that, like, I will still watch things too, but I've recognized more and more that I watch them because I'm feeling so fatigued and I want it as an escape thing. So that's why I'm like, it is a bit like a drug, is what film has turned into for us. And I don't think that we have to reject film because I think it is valuable, but these are the arguments that were made about third cinema because they were saying specifically the techniques that are used in Hollywood film storytelling are centered around emotions. And so even, let's say you're talking about The Notebook, you will be so emotionally swept up in this story or feeling for these two characters that while you're in emotional moments, you're not going to notice that they're telling you not to care about this or framing things in a certain way, that this is the better way to do things, or that this is the better outcome, or this is how we should feel about certain things. And that's what these films are doing to you, and you're not conscious of it because it's not like written in the dialogue. It's how things get framed. So unless you have a really good background, like a rivaling Hollywood background of teams of 3,000 people, each person that's an expert in manipulating you through editing, manipulating you through color, manipulating you through sound, manipulating you through timing, unless you can simultaneously catch all those things, that is the question, right? Is that I do think we have to wean ourselves off of it. But in the short term, I mean, I'm still guilty of that too. Sometimes I'm like, I just can't. I just need to watch something, Yeah, but I think that's something we need to be conscious of, what you're internalizing. And on that note, do not let your kids watch K-pop Demon Hunters.
Okay, good to know. My daughter loves the songs from that because they play them at school, but I haven't let her watch it yet. But mostly because they're too young. So
don't watch it. The songs are also problematic, and that's the thing. Even songs, and that's why you have to have red flares with musicals. Songs are written understanding the psychological impact, how the body, there is a whole psychoanalysis that we use behind all of this, how you respond to certain beats in music. That's why pop music, obviously follows certain things. And the K-pop Demon Hunter songs should be noted that they were written by a Zionist. So but the songs, the stuff that's happening in those films actually is about killing indigenous people and making it cool. And it's really disturbing when you watch, that film normalizes a lot of problematic things, and they're targeting children. Disney's doing it too. So I think that's something that we do have to be, cognizant of.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's really depressing.
All right. On that depressing note, thank you so much, Samantha. This was amazing again. You need a bigger platform, and I would love to connect you with some more people, where you can speak to larger audiences. Thank you so much for your time and generously staying a whole 30 minutes extra. And you can see the people, everybody is just holding their breaths on every word that you're saying. And it's resonating because everything is shocking and true, and it makes sense. Everything's fitting together. All these pieces that we're missing, you're putting them together. So I'm missing them, and everybody else is missing them. Thank you again for your time. Thank you everyone else for being there. Take your time sending me additional links, which I'll include in the recording and the notes I'll send out. And whenever you send them out, a day or two later, I'll send the recording and all the notes and additional links as well.
Thank you.
Next, so our meetings are bi-weekly now. Next in 2 weeks, the meeting coincide with Eid al-Adha, so we will not have a meeting. So the next meeting will be in a month, and there we will be hosting friends from Pink Torah, which is an organization working against pink washing that Israel does. And we will have Jannah, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, who will be honoring us with her presence. And yeah, so we'll see you in 4 weeks. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Samantha.
Thank
Have a
you.
great rest of your day. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, everybody.